In a landmark decision, the Supreme Court of the United States has struck down the Trump administration's sweeping tariffs, signaling a dramatic shift in American economic policy. The ruling dismantles a key pillar of the America First agenda and challenges the president's broad authority to impose trade barriers. For years, global industries have struggled with retaliatory duties and disrupted supply chains. The court's decision offers a sudden, if uncertain, reprieve, forcing a rethinking of how the U.S. approaches trade. The justices found the national security justification for tariffs on steel and aluminum overly broad, lacking proper congressional oversight. This ruling limits the executive branch's power to unilaterally reshape the economy, reaffirming Congress's constitutional role in trade. Free trade advocates see this as a victory, arguing tariffs have hurt American consumers and strained alliances. The decision marks a return to a rules-based order, favoring negotiation over unilateral action. Yet, the process of unwinding tariffs will be complex, as global supply chains have already adapted. The Supreme Court has set a new course, but the path to a stable global trade system is just beginning. The world now braces for the long-term impact as nations and markets adjust to this new reality. The Trump tariffs were central to a strategy that saw trade as a zero-sum game, aiming to protect American industries and punish unfair practices, especially from China. Launched in 2018, tariffs targeted a wide range of goods, starting with solar panels and expanding to steel, aluminum, and more. National security was cited as justification, but the measures quickly escalated into a global trade war. Retaliation was swift. The EU and China imposed their own tariffs, hitting American exports, from motorcycles to soybeans. While some pointed to a renewed focus on domestic production, many U.S. manufacturers faced higher costs and lost competitiveness. Farmers suffered as key export markets closed, and global supply chains were thrown into disarray. The tariffs intended to protect often hurt the very industries they aimed to help. The Supreme Court's decision now overturns this contentious legacy, forcing a reassessment of U.S. trade strategy. The era of tit-for-tat tariffs has left deep scars on global commerce. The ruling marks a decisive end to this chapter of economic confrontation. The Supreme Court's decision focused on constitutional limits, not the economic merits of tariffs. The majority ruled that the president's use of national security to justify broad tariffs overstepped the authority granted by Congress. The court emphasized that regulating foreign commerce is fundamentally a congressional power. Future tariffs under national security grounds will now require a much clearer, direct link to actual threats, and likely more explicit congressional approval. The case, brought by businesses harmed by the tariffs, challenged the legitimacy of using national security as a pretext for protectionism. The 6-3 decision surprised many, signaling the court's willingness to check executive power, even in sensitive policy areas. This ruling rebalances trade authority, curbing unilateral action and restoring congressional oversight. Financial markets responded instantly to the Supreme Court's decision. U.S. stocks surged, especially in manufacturing and industrial sectors relieved by the prospect of lower input costs. European markets rallied, with automakers and exporters seeing renewed optimism as trade barriers eased. Asian markets also gained, hopeful for a shift away from U.S. protectionism. Commodity prices adjusted, U.S. steel and aluminum futures fell, while currencies of resource-exporting nations strengthened. Not all reactions were positive. U.S. steel producers saw their stocks tumble, facing renewed foreign competition. The split response highlights the tariffs' complex domestic impact. Some industries gain, others brace for painful adjustment. The market's swift moves show just how deeply tariffs had shaped global commerce. The decision lifts uncertainty for many, but ushers in a new period of transition. Investors and companies worldwide are recalibrating for a changed trade landscape. The ruling's shockwaves will be felt for months as the world adapts. The global economy is now poised for a new phase of realignment. European leaders greeted the Supreme Court's decision with relief, seeing it as a chance to repair strained transatlantic ties. The Trump-era tariffs had treated allies as adversaries, damaging trust and economic cooperation. The removal of U.S. tariffs reopens key markets for European exporters, especially in steel, aluminum, and autos. German automakers, long under threat of new duties, now see renewed opportunity and stability. Yet European policymakers remain wary, knowing U.S. trade policy can shift quickly. They seek concrete steps from Washington to lower barriers and re-engage with global institutions. The experience has accelerated Europe's push for strategic autonomy, building resilience and reducing reliance on the US. The EU is strengthening its own trade deals and internal market to weather future shocks. While partnership with the US is welcomed, Europe aims to be an equal independent actor in global trade. The decision is a step forward, but trust will be rebuilt gradually. Europe's goal: a balanced relationship, less vulnerable to political swings. The continent is charting its own course in an unpredictable world. Beijing's response to the Supreme Court ruling was measured, welcoming the move as a step toward normalizing trade. While the decision directly affects steel and aluminum tariffs, it signals a weakening of U.S. unilateralism. Chinese officials may see this as a sign of division in U.S. trade strategy, emboldening them in future negotiations. China will likely push for disputes to be resolved through the World Trade Organization, where it has growing influence. The ruling gives China rhetorical leverage, but leaders know core issues: intellectual property, subsidies, market access, remain unresolved. Anti-China sentiment in U.S. politics is still strong, and the broader trade conflict is far from over. Chinese companies will continue diversifying supply chains and reducing reliance on the U.S. market. The drive for technological self-sufficiency will accelerate. The decision eases some uncertainty for exporters, but strategic competition will persist, especially in technology and investment. China welcomes the relief, but prepares for ongoing rivalry. The Supreme Court's move ends one chapter, but the contest continues. China's strategy: adapt, diversify, and compete on new fronts. The Supreme Court's decision could reshape the global trade system, curbing economic nationalism and reviving multilateralism. The ruling may prompt the U.S. to re-engage with the World Trade Organization and restore its dispute resolution system. A rules-based order offers stability, encouraging countries to resolve conflicts through negotiation, not tariffs. The decision could renew interest in comprehensive trade agreements, making unilateral tariffs less attractive. Future deals may focus on labor environment and digital standards, reflecting new political realities. The era of unchecked globalization is over. Resilience and equity are now priorities. Trade policy will balance openness with protections for workers and strategic interests. The world is moving toward a more managed, complex globalization. This ruling is a pivotal moment in setting the new rules. Tariffs have long divided American politics, from Hamilton's protectionism to the free trade ideals of Jefferson. History shows tariffs can split the nation along regional and economic lines, as seen in the 19th century, and again with the Trump tariffs. The Smoot-Hawley Act of 1930, meant to protect jobs, instead deepened the Great Depression through global retaliation. Post-war consensus favored free trade, leading to institutions like GATT and the WTO. The Trump tariffs revived old protectionist debates, but the Supreme Court's decision pushes back, reaffirming legislatively authorized, internationally negotiated trade policy. The pendulum has swung again toward openness, but the debate is never truly settled. This ruling is the latest chapter in America's ongoing struggle over trade. The Supreme Court's decision is a watershed, calming markets and challenging unilateral protectionism. It reasserts Congress's role in trade and nudges the U.S. back toward international cooperation. Europe, China, and global institutions are recalibrating in response. The ruling closes one chapter, but opens another, as the world weighs the future of globalization. The debate over tariffs and trade will persist, shaped by economic anxieties and strategic competition. The court has clarified legal limits, but the political struggle over globalization continues. The world now faces a choice: build a more sustainable, inclusive global order, or risk a return to economic nationalism. The next era of global commerce begins now.